While the world is full of acclaimed economists, there are few who are as easy to understand as Dr. Jeffrey Sachs. He's a distinguished professor from Columbia University and the author of many books. Dr. Sachs has some keen observations about the growing disenchantment with the current state of affairs and the growing anger displayed by Occupy Wall Street. Well, first of all, Doctor, thank you for doing this.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank
I have
you.
so many questions I want to ask you, but let's begin with the, quote, Wall Street protest, which has spread beyond Wall Street. Put a frame around that. What is that about?
People all throughout America are unhappy, though it's mainly the young people that have taken to the protests. Why are they unhappy? First, the economy is stagnant or worse. Jobs are scarce. But they also see that not only have all the gains of our economy gone to the very top, but the wealthy in our country have abused that privilege. Rather than contributing to a renovation, modernization of America, they've just said, give us more, give us our tax cuts, give us our tax havens. And they also twisted the system in really terrible ways. Every major Wall Street firm broke the law in recent years. These are our biggest banks in this country, and each one by one, is paying hundreds of millions of dollars of fines. So the young people out on the Occupy Wall Street are not envious. They're not just disdaining wealth. They're disdaining irresponsibility. They're disdaining illegality. They're saying, what is it that when people become so powerful, they became so irresponsible, so reckless that they brought the whole world economy into crisis? But they did it in such a reprehensible way, and they have a very strong point.
Can they make a difference, or is it once the cold weather gets here, this will pretty much evaporate?
I think America needs a change of direction, and the Occupy movement, as they call it, or the 99%ers, are tapping into a widespread sentiment. I support it. I think it's on the right track. But America is a big ocean liner that changes direction only slowly, as has been typically true in our history. Now, we've had big changes in the past, and I think we're due for another one right now. And it was Teddy Roosevelt, a Republican, who said we've got to bust the trusts, who wrestled down Standard Oil in his day. We have to look after the interests of the average person. That's what Teddy Roosevelt did in the first decade of the 20th century. It's what his distant cousin, Franklin Roosevelt, did in the 1930s. Franklin Roosevelt actually said in the Great Depression, we have become in thrall, almost slaves to a new economic royalty. Oh boy, they hated him on Wall Street. But he said, we're not going to let speculation wreck this country anymore. That's why the Securities and Exchange Commission was established. That's why laws like Glass-Steagall were put in place.
So banks would be limited basically to the banking business.
Not to the gambling business. And Glass-Steagall worked for us from the 1930s until the 1990s. And then lo and behold, who got rid of Glass-Steagall? It was bipartisan. President Clinton and his Treasury and the Republicans in Congress got together to deregulate, and it wasn't a few years after that that we had the biggest financial explosion in history. Because if you deregulate the banking sector and allow these banks to gamble, what these CEOs do is they pocket billions and billions of dollars in private bonuses on the fees that they earn writing these assets, but they don't really care about the long-term consequences, and they blew up the world economy this way.
Well, in Abraham Lincoln's words, we aspire to have a government of the people, by the people, for the people. There is a sentiment in this country, I wouldn't argue majority, that says we've reached the point where we now have a government of corporations, by corporations, for corporations. Too strong?
Not too strong. Very sad, but not too strong. I call it a corporatocracy, that we really are governed by powerful corporate interests. The most powerful corporate lobbies in this country are first big oil, which has such an effect that we can't make a sensible energy policy in this country because it's oil all the time. Second is the financial sector. Third is our private health insurance industry, which is an extraordinarily powerful lobby and which has led us to the world's most expensive healthcare system. Fourth is the famous military-industrial complex that Dwight Eisenhower warned about. Both political parties are part of this. This isn't one party or another. The last 30 years has been a gift to the richest and most powerful people in this country. And the corporations, in a year of very high profits, are paying the smallest share of national income in decades.
But you know the argument. The people who lead these corporations say, Dan, you go talk to, in their words, some leftist college professor, and he doesn't get it, or if he does, he doesn't say it straight. By keeping taxes low and get, quote, regulators off our back, we're the job creators.
They are creating lots of jobs, especially in China in recent years, not in the United States. Some of our biggest industries, companies that I admire, by the way, for what they do, Apple, which I think we all love what they have brought to the world, employs Chinese workers to make the iPhones, the iPads. That's where they're made. They're made by hundreds of thousands of workers in Shenzhen, China, and other parts of China, because our manufacturing base is not competitive in key areas. If we want to have good jobs, not just jobs, but good jobs, we have to have proper training, we have to have proper education, we have to have proper skill development, not just tax cuts for big businesses.
Your latest book is called The Price of Civilization: Reawakening American Virtue and Prosperity. Why did you write this book?
This is a book I never expected to write, and in a way never wanted to write, because it's a book that applies the tools that I've learned in 30 years of work in economies all over the world back on the United States, my own home and my own country. And I never wanted to write it because I always thought the U.S. would be prosperous, out of crisis, forging the way. And as this crisis in fact deepened and we weren't forging the way, I felt that I had to take the time to understand better what had really happened in the U.S. to put us in this wrong direction and what could be done about it. And indeed, the core message is that we don't have just a short-term accident which needs a short-term remedy. We have a long-term crisis that's built up over decades that needs a long-term, very considered and ethical approach to overcome.
If you've got it, watch it. If you don't, call your TV provider to get HDNet today.